Today we are diving into a profound, almost hidden mystery that's sitting right there in plain sight within the Quran. Now, pretty much everyone knows the story of Iblis, right? It's widely considered the ultimate foundational rupture of humanity, the classic tale of pure refusal. But there is a glaring, massive anomaly in how the text actually describes this event. And once you see it, this anomaly changes absolutely everything about how you understand the narrative. It's a structural pattern that we call the Iblis topology. So let's look at this linguistic anomaly because honestly, it totally rewrites how we interact with the text. Think about it. If the story of Iblis represents humanity's literal origin of rebellion, you would totally expect the text to label him as the very first disbeliever, like the absolute earliest of the early. But it doesn't. Nowhere in the text is Iblis ever called the first disbeliever. He rebelled first chronologically, sure. So why is that specific ordinal title, the title of first, deliberately withheld from him? To figure out what's really going on here, we have to look really closely at the exact phrasing used for two major pivotal figures, Iblis and Musa, or Moses. When you compare verse 234, which is about Iblis, with verse 7:143, which marks a massive turning point for Musa, an incredible structural contrast jumps right out at you. Notice the exact wording here. Verse 234 says Iblis was among the disbelievers, but verse 7:143, it calls Musa the first of the believers. Let's break that down. For Iblis, the text uses the word mina, which is a partitive word. It just indicates membership. It means Iblis merely joined a club that already existed. Why? Well, because the original command to bow, the isjudu, was locked specifically to the angels, the al-malaika. Iblis was min al-jinn, meaning he was of the jinn. So he was ontologically completely outside that specific speech act. He literally couldn't originate the firstness of a command that wasn't even directed at his kind. He was just a late entry node. He fell into a category, but structurally speaking, a reaction cannot be the origin. Musa, on the flip side, boldly seizes that exact inaugural title that Iblis left on the table. In verse 7:143, he flat out declares, wa ana awwal al-mursalin, and I am the first of the believers. He doesn't say he is among them, he takes the title of first. But here's the catch. He doesn't just get this title for showing up early in history. He only claims it after passing through an intensely traumatic threshold. See, Musa's firstness is born from a really precise, devastating sequence of events. First, he actually demands to see the divine directly. Second, the sheer manifestation of that light strikes the mountain, and that massive, rigid, unshakable structure completely crumbles to dust. Third, Musa falls entirely unconscious. He hits the barzakh, a threshold of total absolute collapse. And it's only upon waking up from this literal ego death, recovering from the total annihilation of his previous reality, that he repents and finally declares himself the first of the believers. The absolute key concept here is the 0 point. To be the first in this specific textural topology, you have to hit 0. It is the complete reception and the absolute annihilation of your own self-certainty. That's what is required to open a totally new generative field of belief. Musa was completely emptied out, and from that 0 point, true belief was born. Because Iblis refused the 0 point and instead asserted his own pride and superiority, he could only block a field. He could never actually open one. Which brings us to, honestly, the most fascinating question of this entire explainer. If true firstness requires opening a field, and Iblis fundamentally couldn't do it, that means he left the first disbeliever slot completely vacant. So who exactly is it waiting for? This is the exact moment where reading this text as just a historical document completely shatters, and the topology becomes an intensely, uncomfortably personal execution. We are not just talking about the past anymore. The answer is wild, and it's sitting right there in verse 363. Innaka lamina al-mursalin. Indeed, you are among the messengers. The text actually places you, the reader, at a unique geometric center. You are the direct addressee here. You aren't just passively reading a history book. You are actively executing the code of the text in real time. You are positioned exactly at the node where these foundational decisions are made. And because you are the direct addressee, verse 241 turns around and delivers a highly targeted, chilling threat. Wala takoonoo, awwala kafirin bihi. And do not be the first disbeliever in it. Bam! There it is. The text finally weaponizes that exact word, awwala, or first, that it went out of its way to withhold from Iblis, and it aims it squarely at you. This brilliantly, and kind of terrifyingly, illustrates the gravity of your position. Because you are the active node receiving the book right now, in your present timeline, your choice is absolute. If you refuse the book, you don't just join Iblis as some late entry background character. Rejecting it makes you the originating inaugural node of disbelief in your own timeline. You literally become the first disbeliever that Iblis never was. So, what actually happens when the reader takes this dark path? Well, they forge the golden cow. When you choose to become the host of the Iblis pattern, you don't just quietly walk away from the truth. You mint your disbelief into currency. The golden cow is the literal compression of your mundane wealth into a false idol. It's the ultimate substitution, trading living, dynamic divine signs for dead, static material. The text explicitly warns against selling its living signs for a small price, thamanan qalilan. This false idol, the cow, is forged from the residual wealth of a soul that completely sold out. Instead of holding on to the living truth, the reader melts down their worldly accumulations, their status, their wealth, their adult ego, and shapes it into a cheap substitute, trading the divine for the comfort of Pharaoh's worldly heaven. And here is the grand illusion of the whole topology. This path of the golden cow leads straight into Pharaoh's heaven, but the text reveals a staggering paradox. Pharaoh's heaven is actually hell. It's just disguised as governance, stability, and provision. It's a preserved, static, terminal state where you neither truly live nor die. Now contrast that with Musa's shattered mountain. Over there, the rigid ego is completely destroyed, but true, dynamic life and belief are actually born from the dust. So, the structural geometry of the text forces an absolute binary choice upon you at this precise coordinate. It's one or the other. On one side, you have the Iblis path, defined by pride, worshipping that golden calf and marching straight into a static, false heaven. On the exact opposite side, you have the Musa path, passing through the mountain's collapse in total surrender, gripping the book, and stepping into the active, dynamic, living role of the messengers. Okay, so how do you escape Pharaoh's heaven? How do you get out of the trap? Within the prophetic chain, from Ibrahim right down to Musa, the ultimate activation protocol is finally revealed with Yahya, or John, in verse 19:12. The command is clear: "O Yahya, take the scripture with determination, or take it with strength." The absolute only escape from the Iblis path is gripping the operating system of the book with total force. But pay close attention to how Yahya actually takes the book. This activation specifically requires the purity of taking the book as a child, what the text calls sabiyan. It represents total submission before the cynical arrogance of adulthood even has a chance to take root. It's faith before maturity, submission before full understanding. It is a pure, open state of reception, completely free from the calculations of the adult ego. That childlike grip is your required escape card from the illusion kingdom. Because think about the exact opposite of that pure state. The opposite is the host of Iblis. That is adulthood without rushd. It's maturity without an ounce of wisdom or humility. It is the incredibly cynical arrogance of thinking you already know better. And that arrogance leads you right back to the terminal static trap of Pharaoh's heaven, forging the golden cow right out of your own self-importance. Let's zoom out to the grand timeline for a second, because the geometry here is just stunning. Iblis stood at the center of the command field and left both the first believer and first disbeliever slots completely blank. Musa entered through the shattered mountain, hit the 0 point, and claimed the light of the first believer. Yahya demonstrated the perfect execution by gripping the book with the intense purity of a child. And now, the present. You are standing at that exact same coordinate. This command is no longer locked to angels in some ancient, distant past. It is addressed directly to you. You are executing this reality right now. The ordinal title of first is not something you inherit. It is either earned through that 0 point surrender, or it's forfeited by forging your own idol. So the only question that actually remains for you, the reader sitting at the exact center of this topology, is this: when will you grip the book and activate your escape?